Good morning, YouTube. Exo here. What I want to talk about today is the different type of Evony players. And this is going to be kind of more of a chat video. I'm just going to kind of be doing whatever in the background. So you could put this on while, you play the game in the background, driving, whatever. But so obviously there's different type of players for in the game. Those range from, PvPers, PvEers, resource farmers, different things like that. And I have a list of 16 type of players I've come up with a little short description that we'll just kind of go over and talk about. The first is achievers. So this is the players that kind of strive to gain the rewards, complete the puzzles, complete the the fame list. They may have the goal of defeating every boss. They may have the goal of defeating every boss with, the lowest amount of troops, the least amount of wounded, preferably 0 wounded. Completing every puzzle, because this, even though most of us don't fucking care for the puzzles, this is a puzzle game, apparently, according to Evony. So, yeah, Achievers is the first one. The second one is Socializers. This is a player who uses the game to socialize with others worldwide. These players range from beginners to top-tier players, but most are casual and are focusing on making friends. A lot of these, socializer type players came from the COVID era. Evony blew up during COVID because of the stupid ads and things like that. So a lot of them were just trying to socialize or play some puzzle games, and then they realized there's a social aspect, so then they really were socializing. Third is, kind of ties in with the first two also, is puzzle solvers. They were drawn into the game, obviously, from the ads to play puzzles, and then they, got sucked in the other ways, and they're still here, but yeah. So, moving on to number 4 is server hoppers. These are players who frequently switch servers and then instead of staying on a specific server for an extended period of time. So a server hopper could stay on a server anywhere from just a few minutes to a few months, but generally after a few months, they will just up and leave and move on to a new server. Number 5, the resource farmers. These are players who primarily farm tiles and small bosses for the resources. They may not grow very large, and they accumulate many farms for gathering resources. We have some of these guys on our server that they just gather and they never grow. Like a lot of these keeps here in Jim, they have been playing since day one. This dude K34 been playing, for 2-3 years and still not even maxed. It's because he's just his play style is resource farmer, That's what he likes to play. Number 6, the PvE players. Players who enjoy boss killing, running rallies, engaging in minimal PvP. Their primary focus is mounting troops and the mounted buffs to clear as many high-level bosses as possible. Generally, these guys have some good knowledge of PvP, or not PvP mechanics, bossing mechanics. We had a player that was this way. He didn't care much for the PvP, but he really enjoyed the PvE aspect, and he was one of our top, boss killers before he decided to quit. Number 7 is hoarders. These players love seeing a massive amount of chests, kind of like this, kind of like these material chests. But these players like seeing the massive amount of chests and items in their inventory. They rarely open them to grow. And then some players may even quit the game thinking they can't grow and become big, and then only to find out when they've passed their keep on, they had a vast amount of resources unused in their account. I've got an instance of this. About probably a year into our server, maybe 6 months. I'm not sure. I don't really remember. It's been a long time. We had there was a player in the HMR Alliance that decided he was done with the game because he couldn't grow. He said he just couldn't grow. He didn't understand how people was getting bigger other than, coining, and he wasn't willing to coin, all that much. Well, I acquired his accounts, and come to find out, between his main and like 2 or 3 farm accounts that he had, this dude that was like K33 or K34 or something like that, he had resources, he had up to 30 billion of each resource, and then tons of everything else. So like he could have grown, but he just chose to hoard everything instead of growing. Number 8, free to play. These are players who enjoy the game without spending money, either because they can't or they prefer the slower pace of the game. Although they may typically be a top player, they can still have fulfilling and fun experience with sufficient dedication. These typically will be players that aren't going to be in All-Stars, or if they're in All-Stars, they're in like the lower leagues. They're not. At some point, they can make the major league in an early server, like new server in the new continents. But generally, that's kind of their cap. So they'll be, building flippers, and they'll be building flippers or rally fillers for their alliance. Number 9 are players who spend real money on the game for quicker progression and better buffs. These players often take time to learn the game to maximize the impact of their spending. So these are the guys that jump up in power quick. They're the guys that are always growing. They're the guys that are, gaining the buffs. When new updates come around, they get the quick buffs, things like that. Number 10, you have the mechanic junkie. Typically, this is a group of players. They analyze the game mechanics using things like spreadsheets, calculators, websites, and other tools. And these are invaluable to the community. These players are critical, or not critical. These players are crucial because developers provide limited information, so their efforts to create resources benefit everyone. This is especially true for Evony, because Evony does not tell you shit about their game. Honestly, I don't think Evony knows shit about their game for the most part. Number 11, PvP. These are players who love the thrill of battle, including server versus server, battlefield, or open PvP on their own server. These players understand the PvP mechanics and maintain a balanced set of troops and try to optimize the most amount of high buffs. Number 12 are trap players. These are players who focus on things like the T1 cav traps, T1 siege or high tier siege traps, the ghost one marks ghost keep traps, typically like that. Usually these could be some free to play players or low spenders, and there's traps in every aspect of the game, and these sometimes give a challenge to higher level players on how to break these traps down because they're harder to defeat than some other accounts. Number 13 is the server troll / server tiler. These are players who enjoy trolling people by the means of causing trouble on world chat, stealing bosses, so they'll be jumping around, watching alliances, seeing where the lines go, steal their bosses from the rally from another alliance, attacking resource tiles, attacking farms that are not bubbled, attacking relics. It's kind of like this right there. There's one burning. That's funny. This just to help disrupt the other players' progression, and generally they're like a one-man server or alliance, so they can kind of do what they want and grow at their own pace because they are getting the bosses all to themselves. 14 is a resource seller, players who offer service to gather in-game resource in exchange for real-world money. These players typically join the server, create hundreds of alts for either gathering resources or joining specific rallies, boss rallies. Big whales appreciate these sellers as their resources are cheaper than the resources from in-game packs. These a lot of people don't like because obviously it's kind of considered cheating. But it is what it is at this point. It's in the game and kind of how it is. Number 15 is your whales or krakens. These are players who spend substantial amounts of money, hundreds of thousands or even some into the millions, to become a top player or become what they think is a top player. They often lead the rallies and alliances, spend hours studying the game to master PvP. Some of these are that way. There's some, though, that are huge and they don't have the best buffs. They don't have different things like that, but they have the pocketbook to gain 200 billion power really fast, faster than anybody else, and they may not have a true understanding of the game, but when you're that big, you can kind of do as you please, I guess. Last but not least is 16. This is island players. Normally, these are kind of a spin-off of your krakens and whales. They're wealthy players who start the game with significant investments, aiming to grow rapidly. They may dominate their server initially, but sometimes they don't have this player base to support, them long term. So then they end up being an island player, and generally will just jump into a battlefield, and generally they'll win because they can solo enough players to score really well, but they don't have enough points just by themselves to lose the battlefield. So that's kind of some 16 of the players that I see in the game, like the most common players I see in the game. There's probably 16 more, 100 more. There's all kind of players. Let me know in the comments below, what kind of player you are. Me personally, I am more of a, used to be more of a coiner. I've kind of fell back into the free-to-play, more like the free-to-play PvP player. I'm also like rally leader for the Alliance with when Sky Dragon can't make it, things like that. I guess that's the 17th type of player. Is some players, after they get tired of the game, they'll quit, sell their keep, but then they get to missing the game, so they'll come back, but they'll come back as a filler, and they will play other people's accounts and other people's alliances when they can't make it. But anyways, let me know in the comments below what kind of player you are. Hopefully y'all like this video. Share it with your friends. Like, subscribe. I'll catch y'all later.